The Book of Good Counsels, from the Sanskrit Hithopadesha, by Sir Edwin Arnold. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Jyoti Taravanat. Notes. 1. Honor to Ganesh. Ganesh or Ganapati is the god of prudence, whom the Hindus invoke at the outset of all under the guardian of the household. 2. A city named Pataliputra, now Patna, near the confluence of Soani and Ganges. 3. The sacred writings. The Vedas, or Holy Book of India. They are 4 in number and are called the Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda and Atharva Veda. Hymns and metrical addresses to the elemental god occupy them mainly. 4. Childless art thou, less thy misery than his is, who is father to a fool. The force of this comparison is only perceived by recollecting the extreme anxiety of the Hindu to obtain and leave behind him male offspring. The Sanskrit word putra, son, is declared to be a contraction from pulitra, which means a delivery from hell, pul, and the simple performance of the funeral, shraddha, a libation by a son, is held sufficient to procure repose for the spirit of his departed father. The Hindu proverb says, "Whoso begetteth a son, planteth a tree, and diggeth a well, that man shall rest in heaven." 5. Sesame, the tilla seed which, together with the coconut nut, supplied Hindustan with oil. 6. Pandits, learned men. 7. The angel of the planet Jupiter. Brihaspati, the instructor of the gods. Like the rest of the Hindu divinities, he casts no shadow in moving. His eternally watchful eyes never even wink with fatigue, and a crown of flowers on his head blossoms in perpetual beauty and freshness. 8. The silk cotton tree, Sanskrit Shalimali. 9. His radiance, the moon. The moon, Chandra, is a masculine deity in Hindu mythology. The white lotus opens its blossoms at night only, hence his descriptive epithet. 10. A crow. The Indian crow is everywhere seen and heard in India. Its plumage is black, with a dull grey hood extending over the head and neck. 11. God of Death. Yama, called here Kritana, or the end bringer. He is god of justice as well as of death, and sits in judgment upon disembodied souls in his infernal city of Yamapura. Thence he dismisses them upwards to Swarga, downwards to Naraka, or back again to earth in the form of some animal. 12. Bangle. The bracelet in one solid piece of gold, silver, brass, glass or earthenware, worn by all Indian women. 13. An old tiger. It is true to nature that an old tiger should be the villain of this episode and devour the traveller, for it is generally when the tiger has lost his teeth and claws by age, and with them his powers of securing antelopes, cattle, etc., that he becomes a professed man-stealer. The popular notion was that the hide of a man-killer became worn and mangy as a punishment for attacking man, his lord. But it is not until his hide thus assumes the aspect of old age that he has recourse to such easy but illicit food. 14. Kusa grass. Used in many religious observations by the Hindus. 15. Cows, Brahmans and men. The tiger justifies his self-condemnation by confessing to one of the greatest moral guilts possible, the slaughter of cows, a sin all but inexpiable. 16. Son of Kunti. Kunti was wife of Pandu and mother of the Pandava princes of the Mahabharata. 17. Neither give, etc. Here and elsewhere the intelligent reader will remark a curious similarity between these ancient Hindu proverbs and those of Solomon. 18. Vanish in the dragon's jaw. Rahu, an evil spirit with the tail of a dragon, was held to be the cause of eclipses by swallowing occasionally the moon and sun. The legend had this origin. At the time when the gods were drinking the nectar churned from the ocean by the direction of Vishnu, Rahu insinuated himself among them and began to drink. The sun and moon, as guardians for the gods, observed the intrusion and revealed it. Vishnu at once cut off the head of the venturous devil, and as the Amrit drink had rendered him immortal, the head and tail retained their separate life and were placed in the stellar sky. Rahu, therefore, still mindful of the injury done him by the sun's interference, loses no opportunity of enclosing his ancient enemy in his jaws. 19. Can a golden deer, etc. An allusion to an episode in the great poem of the Ramayana. Manisha takes the form of a golden river, in pursuing which Rama is led away insensibly from his abode, and Ravana comes as a beggar and carries off Sita in his absence. 20. The three wide worlds: heaven, earth, and the lower regions. 21. The king of the mice. The mouse, as vehicle of Ganesha, is an important animal in Hindu legend. 22. Sickness, anguish, bends, and woe spring from wrongs wrought long ago. By this theory of a series of existences continued until the balance is just and the soul has purified itself, the Hindu accounts for the origin of evil. Every fault must have its expiation, and every higher faculty its development, pain and misery being signs of and ordeals in the trial, which is to end in the happy reabsorption of the emancipated spirit. 23. Champak Grove. The champak is a bushy deciduous tree, bearing a profusion of white star-like blossoms with golden center, and of the most pleasing perfume. 24. Fig tree, Sanskrit Pakti. A large handsome tree with leaves curiously weaved. 25. The moon penance. A religious observance inculcated by Manu. The devotee commences the penance at the full moon with an allowance of 15 mouthfuls for his food, diminishing this by 1 mouthful each day, till on the 15th it is reduced to 1. As the new moon then increases, his allowance also ascends to its original proportion. 26. Brahmacharya. A votary of the Vedas, a name technically applied to young Brahmins after the investiture with the sacred cord, and generally to Pandita and Vedic professors. 27. Agni is the twice born's master. Agni, the deity of fire, under his manifestations of light, the sun, etc., occupies a large portion of the Vedic liturgy. The twice born is the Brahman whose second birth is dated from investiture with the sacred thread. 28. Krishna, the god Vishnu under his most celebrated and popular form. He is represented as of a handsome and graceful person, with the dark blue complexion which the name implies. 29. Unto Swarga, etc. Heaven, the paradise of Indra, and the happy abode of the souls of the just and of the gods. 30. And the castor oil's a tree where no tree else its shade affords. The castor plant, although not altogether a shrub, seldom assumes the proportions and dignity of a tree. It either grows thick as a bush, or shoots up to 12 or 16 feet like a sapling. 31. Oil of sandalwood, an extract from the well-known fragrant tree of India. 32. The prince of all the serpents, Vasuki or Ananta, the chief of the human-headed serpents, who people Patala or the regions under the earth. 33. Hari's name and Haras. The first is the god Vishnu, the second Shiva. 34. And to taste the salt of service. Italian scholars will recall the sorrowful lines of Dante, so nearly resembling these. Tu provirai sicom sa di sale lopane altrui icamodura caso lo sendire il salir per le lutri scale. Dante, Paradiso, Cant 17. 35. Breathe he like a blacksmith's bellows. This implement in India is a sewn goat skin, inflated with one hand and noisily emptied by the other. 36. The last thunder, alluding to the pralaya or termination of one of the kalpas of the world's existence. 37. Resolved into the 5 elements, the 5 constituent ingredients of the body, a common periphrasis for death in Sanskrit writings. 38. Lakshmi, the wife of Vishnu, goddess of beauty and abundance. She sprang like Aphrodite from the sea when the gods churned it with the mountain Mandara to obtain the Amrit or nectar. 39. New corn. The Hindus are as fond as the English learned to become of the green ear of the jawari stalk, parched and eaten hot with butter and pepper. A deer named dappleback. Antelopes are common in all parts of India. The true deer, such as the sambar, is found in the forest only. 41. The koil, the black or Indian cuckoo. 42. The god of the 5 shafts, Kama, the Indian Cupid. His bow is made of flowers, the string is a row of bees, and he wounds with 5 arrows, typifying the 5 senses. He is known also as Manmatha, the heart shaker, Manasija, the heart begotten, and Angana, the bodiless. The second title refers to his reputed origin from the heart of Brahma, though the god is also represented as the son of Lakshmi and Vishnu. He is called the bodiless from a misadventure with Shiva, whom he dared to aim at, but the indignant deity reduced the anchor to cinders with one glance of his central eye. He is painted as a handsome boy riding on a parrot and surrounded by maidens who bear his banner with the fish Makara. 43. The forest of Brahma, a wood where the Vedas are read and expounded, a Hindu academic. 44. The reverential prostration of the 8 members. The salutations of India are Spanish in their variety and exactness. The salam is universal, but the native greets his neighbor with the more cordial Ram Ram, and receives it with gratification from the Sahib. The better hand must always be employed, and is raised pressed to the palm of the other to perform a namaskar, the salutation of a Brahman. The prostration alluded to in the text is performed by lowering at once to the ground the hands, breast, forehead, eyes, 2 knees, and 2 feet. 45. The moment of fortunate conjunction. The astrologer is an important personage in every Hindu town or village to decide upon lucky or unlucky days. The rules for his decision are freely given by Manu. The day of new moon, he says, destroys the spiritual teacher or guru. The 14th is bad for the learner, and nothing in the Veda read on the 8th day and the day of full moon will be remembered. 46. A vow to Gauri, the fair goddess, that is Parvati, wife of Shiva. 47. He whose forehead jewel is the moon, Shiva. 48. The Surma, Unjun, the antimony powder used universally by Hindu women to darken the lids and lashes of the eye. It is applied with a small stick rubbed upon the powder, and a little consequently goes a long way. 49. Chatti, the large earthen pot employed to hold water. 50. Seeing how the ant hill grows. In the great plains of India, the large ant hills form a marked feature. They are thrown up with great rapidity, and have been seen to rise by a public road to the height of 3 feet or more in a night. 51. The Chhatra, the white umbrella borne above the heads of Indian Rajas, and especially appropriated to royalty, like the Chauri or yak tail. 52. The retreat of Drumma, personified virtue under the form of the bull of Shiva. 53. Kayath caste, a writer, a man sprung from a Kshatriya father and a Sudra mother. 54. Washerman, the labor of the laundry in India is always performed on hard rocks by the riverside, and principally by men called dhobis. 55. Starve thy maw, etc. Literally, with the belly serve the eater of oblations. Utashan, that is, stint thyself to perform the sacrifice. 56. Brihaspati, the grave, regent of the planet Jupiter, and instructor of the divinities. 57. In the north, there are no lions in India excepting that called the maneless lion, occasionally met with in Gujarat. 58. The king of Chidi, Sishupala. He took also the forms of Ravana and of Hiranyakasipu to oppose Krishna, who killed him. 59. Ganapati, Ganesh, the deity of prudence, born from the bathing water of the goddess Parvati. A cowrie, a little seashell used in India for small change. About 6,000 go to the rupee. 61. The tree of paradise, a tree growing in Indra's Swarga, which instantly produced whatever was desired. 62. The form called Gandharva. Manu, in his book 3rd, gives the form of 8 different kinds of marriage. This is that without ceremonies and by mutual consent. The ordinary Hindu rite is very graceful, and resembles in some points the classic custom. At any time after the moonj or investiture with the sacred thread, the Brahman boy is marriageable, and the girl must not be 10 years old. They meet at the bride's house the Langana Patrika or marriage horoscope having been previously made out by the astrologer. There they go through the Satpati, walking together 3 times round a fire, 7 steps at each time. Then their garments are tied together, and an offering is placed upon the flames, completing the rite. The bride remains at her father's house until the age of 12 or 13, when she is claimed by her husband. 63. Cut thy nose off, the ordinary expedient of an incensed husband in the East. 64. Yama and the 7 guardians. These 8 protecting deities rank next below the Hindu trinity. They are 1. Indra, the air; 2. Agni, the fire; 3. Chandra, the moon; 4. Surya, the sun; 5. Pavana, the wind; 6. Yama, the lord of justice and of the lower worlds; 7. Varuna, god of the waters; and 8. Kubera, the master of wealth. 65. Shaving the head of the barber's wife. This indignity reduced her to the appearance and the miserable status of a widow. 66. The 3 prerogatives of the throne. Regal authority derives its rights from the 3 sources with the Hindu authors, namely power, prescription or continuance, and wisdom. 67. Watered them with nectar. The Greek word nectar and the Sanskrit amrit are alike in their etymology. The immortal both were the food of the undying gods, and the Hindu deities thus obtained their ambrosia. The Daityas, like the Titans, had waged war upon the divinities, the Asuras, and these last betook themselves to Vishnu for protection. He bade them cast certain medicinal herbs into the sea of milk. Then, taking Mount Mandara for a churning stick, and the king of the serpents for the twisting string, the god began to churn the ocean for nectar. The Daityas themselves aided on promise of sharing in the strength-restoring extract, and stood at the serpent's head, while the Asuras worked at the tail. The great Vishnu also took part in the work as a tortoise, upon whose back the mountain whirled round backwards and forwards. Out of the seething flood there came up at the last a figure robed in white, Dhanvantari, the physician of the gods, who bore in his hands the first cup full of Amrit. From the same ocean also rose the ever lovely Lakshmi, the marvellous cow, from which all things that could be desired might be milked. And the Kalkut, a poison which stained the neck of Shiva. The nectar thus obtained bestowed new vigour on the wearied gods, and was stored up in the moon, where the lunar rays ripen and perfect it. 68. Gurud, the lord of the birds. He is the vehicle and the attendant of Vishnu, and has a human face with the wings of a bird. 69. The god Narayan. Varuna, god of the world of waters. This deity is regent of the west, and a lord of punishment, holding a noosed cord wherewith to bind transgressors beneath the sea. His Vahana, a vehicle, is the great fish Mukar. The present age Kalpa of the world is called Varaha, or the boars, and was initiated by Narayan. When that Supreme Lord, says the Vishnu Puran, woke and beheld the universe void, knowing that the earth lay hid within the waters, he assumed the body of a wild boar and plunged in them, raised up the earth till it floated upon the waves. The name Narayan, suggestive of the Greek Nereus, denotes him whose progress Ayana is upon the face of the waters, Nara. The life to come, literally the other world, Paralok. 71. The azure lotus. The lotus resembles our water lily, but is more varied in form and colour. There are white, red, blue, and yellow varieties. 72. Another hath the spoils. There is a belief constantly occurring in Hindu writings that the elephant's head contains precious stones resembling pearls. The remorseful monarch alludes to this and compares his conquest to the slaughter of an elephant, which leaves guilt to the lion and gives the pearls to some chance hunter. 73. A Brahmin who eats all things equally. This epithet, Sarvabhaksha, and the comparison are very strong, and suffice to quiet King Tawny Hide's conscience. A Brahmin who ate flesh would be like the unclean Rakshasas or demons. 74. Peacock and Swan. The peacock is wild in most Indian jungles. The swan, Sanskrit Hansa, is a species of flamingo of a white colour with markings of a golden yellow. The voice and gait of a beautiful woman are likened in the Hindu poets to those of the Hansa. It is a vehicle of the god Brahma. 75. The Vindhya Mountains. The chain between Hindustan and the south country or Deccan. The name is said to imply that they appear from their loftiness to stop the sun in his declining course. Jambu Dvipa. The land of the rose apple. The central of the 7 continents, containing the regions known to Hindu geographers. It may not be out of place to sketch in this note the Hindu cosmology. He reads in his Puranas that Paryavarta, son of the self-born, grieving to see the earth but half illumined at one time by the sun, drove round it 7 times in his own flaming chariot, the wheels of which formed 7 ruts, which are now the beds of 7 oceans. The continents thus divided are also 7. Jambudvipa is the central one, with Mount Meru for its own centre, where men are born of the colour of burnished gold, and the women resemble blue lotuses, where all live as do the gods, and have the vital forces of 10,000 elephants. Around Jambudvipa runs a sea of salt water, and beyond it lies the Plaksha Dvipa. There the happy inhabitants know nothing of sickness and live 5,000 years. Plaksha Dvipa is divided by a sea of sugarcane juice from Shalamalai Dvipa. The castes of this continent are the tawny, the purple, the yellow, and the red, and in it the vicinity of the gods is very delightful to the soul. A sea of wine intervenes between this land and Kusha Dvipa. There no one dies but the gods and Gandharvas. The heavenly minstrels share in their pastimes of the fair and innocent persons who dwell in the land. Kusha Dvipa is separated from Krauncha Dvipa by its sea of ghee or clarified butter. This last is twice as large as the first, and the inhabitants dwell among its mountains with the immortal gods, whom they regard without fear. Outside the Krauncha Dvipa rolls the sea of curds and whey, washing also the shores of Saka Dvipa, a favoured land where there is no vice, nor envy, nor injustice. In the Black Mountains, Syama of this country, the men are black, and they worship the god Vishnu as the sun. Round the dark shores of Krauncha Dvipa, like an armlet of ivory on a Brahmin's wrist, flows the sea of milk. It divides this continent from the last and farthest of the 7, the Pushkara Dvipa. In the perfect joy of this distant sphere, there is no distinction of highest and lowest, of killer or slain, of truth or falsehood. The people are of one form with the gods, and too high for duty or observances. Food they consume, but it comes spontaneously to them upon desire, and delicately prepared. There is no evil there, but endless good. And for the mind yet unsatiated with a receding infinity, beyond Pushkara is the sea of fresh water, equal to itself in breadth. Passing that is the golden land without inhabitants, and yet beyond it lie the Loka mountains, dark, immovable, and 10,000 yojans, 50,000 miles high and broad. Outside the darkness is the shell of the mundane egg, of which eggs, concludes the Purana, there be thousands and tens of thousands, yea, 100 millions of millions. 77. Their hanging nests. These birds seem to select the bushes over the mouth of a well, or the slender twigs of a tree, as safe places from the snakes. 78. A frog in a well, having no more knowledge than the frog has of light. 79. Am I not Sasanka? From the Sanskrit Sasa, a hare. 80. Shiva reigns forever Shiva, while the sea waves stain his neck. At the churning of the waters, along with the Amrita and the beautiful Lakshmi, came up also a deadly venom, Kalkut, fatal to mortals. To avert its evil influence, the god Shiva drank it up, but it was potent enough to stain his throat black or dark blue, whence his title of Nilakanta, the blue throated. 81. The wife of Ramachandra, that is Rama, who was absent in the chase of a phantom deer of gold. 82. Peepal tree, or Pimpal, the holy fig. 83. A betel leaf. The Pan Supari, a compound of betel nut, lime and cloves wrapped up in a leaf of the paper vine and chewed by all India. 84. The faithful wife. By such a death as that allowed to, she earns the title of Sati, the excellent. 85. The paddy bird, the common Indian crane, a graceful white bird to be seen everywhere and always in the interior of Hindustan. Singhala Dvipa, the land of the lion, Ceylon. He is sure to join in. The cry of one jackal at night raises a chorus from all those within hearing. Vachaspati, policy, the lord of talk, Hodi, government. 89. Gods, a word applied to ranges of mountains by which, as by a staircase, the country rises into an elevated region. Also to be step-like path leading over or through the mountains, and to the flight of stairs at a riverside landing place. 90. A Rajput. Here synonyms with Kshatriya, a man of the military caste. The complementary beetle. The Pan Supari, neatly folded into a triangular form and pierced through by a clove, is handed round at the close of all occasions of ceremony. Judged by its popularity and not by a first experiment upon it, it deserves the encomium which King Silver Sides cannot repress. 92. The dark half of the month. The Hindus divide their month into two divisions of 15 tithis or days each. Shud, the bright day, is occupied by the increase of the moon, and Vud, the dark half, marks the moon's waning. The 14th night of the dark half would be intensely dark. 93. The fortune, the Lakshmi, the attendant genius. 94. The 32 auspicious marks. The superstition preserved to us in palmistry is of common occurrences in the Hindu writings. In Book 19 of the Vana Parva Mahabharat, Vahuka chooses his horses by the 10 avratas or marks of excellence. Never, says King Rituparna, never shall we reach Vidarbha drawn by steeds so slight and small. Vahuka replies, 2 on head and 1 on forehead, marks of metal here be all. 2 on chest, on this and that flank 2 and 2, on crop of 1. These the steeds shall reach Vidarbha long before the day be done. 95. Thy Guru, the spiritual instructor of a young Brahman. 96. With his shoulder scratching horn, large branching horns which reach backward and rub upon his shoulders. 97. The Apsaras, the Houris of Indra's heaven. They also were produced at the churning of the ocean, in raiment and ornaments of celestial splendor. Their office is to receive into paradise, and to solace there with the delights of love and the souls of all who have died fighting bravely. In the Nala of the Mahabharat, Book 2, Indra the god is made to say, they, the just, the lion-hearted lords who never yielding place, saw the shafts descending death blow, saw and took it on their face. Theirs this realm of endless joy is, as the cow of plenty mine. Let them come, the dead in battle, lo, I wait them, guests divine. 98. Time not come, etc. These composite titles may serve as instances of conjoined Sanskrit words. One such is the Champu of Trivikrama, contains 118 letters. 99. The mongoose, an animal of the weasel kind, very common in India, and valued for its active animosity against all serpents. 100. The pot breaker. This episode is the undoubted origin of Al-Nasja in the Arabian Nights, and of a host of stories and proverbs against the impudence of counting chickens before they are hatched. 101. Sunda the strong and giant Upasunda, 2 of the Daityas, the Hindu titans who fought against the Suras. 102. That god who wears the moon, Shiva, on whose brow the moon shines brave, like the foam on Ganga's wave. 103. Saraswati, the wife of Brahma, goddess of speech and eloquence, inventress of the Devanagari character and of the Sanskrit. Thou, says the sage Vasishta, addressing her in the Mahabharat, Salya Parva, art nourishment, radiance, fame, perfection, intellect, light. Thou art speech, thou art Swaha. This world is thine, and thou in fourfold form art in all its creatures. 104. Parvati, the wife of Shiva, another name for Durga, the mountain queen. She is the daughter of Himala, king of the snowy hills, and her temple, as at Pune, stands generally on a lofty spot. 105. Brahmins for their love, etc. Here is a mention of our castes with their distinctive occupations. 106. They be 20. I suppress this in this place 19 shlokas or stanzas of the original, which enumerate rather tediously the vices or failings to be avoided in an ally. 107. Yudhishthira, the hero of the Mahabharata, who crowns the devotion of his life by refusing to enter heaven unless his wife and friends share in its felicities with him. 108. Puja, sacrifice. 109. Course, 2 miles. 110. Kafila, a caravan. 111. A twice passed Brahman. The young Brahman, being invested with the sacred thread and having concluded his studies, becomes of the second order, a householder, grihastha. 112. Thou son of Pandu, Yudhishthira, the titular son of the Prince of Delhi in the Mahabharata. 113. He cursed me. The power of a Brahman's curse is everywhere illustrated in Hindu writings. Carry me to Viswamitra, says Vasishtha, lest he curse thee, O chief of rivers. Mahabharata, Salya Parva. These sages transformed each other into birds by the force of mutual imprecation. Bhagavata Purana 976. But Viswamitra was originally a Kshatriya and became a Brahman by his austerities only. Vasishtha, a true Brahman, resisted by a curse the celestial weapons raised against him. Shaktri, also his son, met the king Kamalashapada and, refusing to yield the path, was struck by him. The Brahman instantly cursed the king to become a man-eater, and the first victim of the imposed propensity was the powerful but improvident Shakti himself. Mahabharata, Adi Parva. The ocean, originally fresh and pure, became salt by the power of a Brahmanic imprecation. End of notes. End of the Book of Good Counsels, from the Sanskrit of the Hitopadesha by Sir Edwin Arnold. Recording by Jyoti Taravanat.